If you have made it to the very end of the Outlast Trials and completed your final test to become reborn, you would have seen a very interesting yet short scene, as your character is now adapting to the world post-Lathe program. However, there is much more to this than meets the eye with this particular scene, as I came to learn. As it turns out, I missed some vital moments in the final scene in this previously Story Explained video, and I want to thank everybody that pointed it out. So, I decided to ask you guys if you wanted a video going into those missed story points, and after seeing the results of the community post, here we are. When the player character awakens, the very first thing that you can see is the blood covering their clothes, bed, and even bloody footprints on the floor. The shock expressed by the character is clearly showing that they have no recollection of what happened, or quite frankly, where they even are. But one thing is clear. You are in some type of hotel room, and your exact location is made more clear by simply looking outside your window. That particular flag is the national flag of Cuba, which means that our reagent has done some travelling since leaving the Murkoff facilities. We can find a further clue as to where we are exactly within Cuba with this small book on the table named La Habana, which, if you didn't know already, is the Spanish name for the city of Havana, the capital city and the largest city within Cuba. So, the question needs to be asked, why are you in Cuba? For what purpose would Murkoff have to send you there after your time during the Lathe program? Well, it's important to set out a rough timeline. We know from documentation that can be found throughout the facilities that Murkoff has been planning the Lathe program since around 1949, eventually starting their first iteration of the program in 1956, before needing to completely rethink their volunteer strategy for a second iteration of the program in 1959. This is the same program that we participated in, so we know that these events are taking place post-1959. How long after is a mystery, but I would assume that Murkoff would have taken advantage of their experiments quickly, as they aren't historically a company that likes to mess around much. Now, there are a few theories going around online as to the reason that you find yourself in Cuba, most popular of which is that you've been sent out to kill Fidel Castro, a real-life Cuban revolutionary that was the Prime Minister of Cuba starting from 1959. And yes, you did hear that right, 1959. Seems like a very big coincidence if the two are actually unrelated. And while it might seem strange when you ask yourself, for what reason would Murkoff have to kill Fidel Castro? What would they have to gain? It's also important to remember that the Lathe program was a joint operation between Murkoff and the CIA, which, given the circumstances of the location at the end of the game, would suggest that the player character was one of the successful reagents that was given to the CIA for the issues of state, instead of personalized Murkoff interests. And when we look at this through the lens of the reagent being used by the CIA instead of Murkoff, this makes a lot more sense. Fidel Castro and the CIA did not get along at all. And if rumors are to be believed, Fidel Castro was said to have survived upwards of 638 assassination attempts, much of them being from the CIA. And they were some pretty creative methods. They used exploding cigars, poison-filled pens, and even booby-trapped seashells, to name a few. There are public documents that show that during the years of 1959, 1960, and 1961, the CIA had many operatives in Havana, Cuba, with the intention of bringing down Fidel Castro and his brother Raul Castro. So, you might be wondering, why did the CIA and by proxy the American government want Fidel Castro dead in the first place? Well, in 1959, Fidel came into power by overthrowing Fulgencio Batista, the nation's American-backed president, and since Fidel was viewed as being a communist in the close proximity of Cuba to the United States, it made the US nervous. So the reasoning for the character's presence in Cuba is concrete in this theory, but unfortunately we don't have the exact time frame, and context does matter in these short amount of years. For example, if this takes place in 1959, then it is right on the precipice of Fidel Castro's coming of power within Cuba, so the reagent could be used as a preventative, for example. However, if this takes place instead in 1960, there is a very good chance that the CIA has brought in the reagents from the Murkoff trials as an alternative method, since the failed attempts during 1959 on Fidel Castro's life. However, if this instead takes place in 1961, only a short 2 years after the Murkoff Lathe 2 program, this could possibly be during the period of the Bay of Pigs invasion, which, if you don't know, was caused due to Fidel Castro establishing diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union in 1960. As a result, the United States prohibited the importation of Cuban sugar. This would be absolutely crippling to the Cuban economy, since the United States sugar imports comprised of 80% of the country's total. So the USSR agreed to buy that sugar to stop the Cuban economy from collapsing. So in 1961, John F. Kennedy severed US diplomatic relations with Cuba and stepped up its preparations for an invasion. The main planner for this invasion was the CIA. It ended up being a massive failure for the US, but it's absolutely plausible that the Murkoff agents were sent in 1961 in preparations for the Bay of Pigs invasion. And then there's 1962, only 3 years after the Lathe II program, when the Cuban Missile Crisis took place. A confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union that almost boiled over into a nuclear war. It involved the Soviet Union placing strategic missiles, some of them nuclear, inside of Cuba, and due to the close proximity of the US, caused a lot of tension and problems between the two countries, with Cuba being right in the middle of it all. So, again, it could be in relation to the Cuban Missile Crisis. And as you can see, there is no shortage of reasons that the reagent, and by proxy, the CIA would have by sending your character to Cuba. The question is more about when it happened. Now, I want to address some added things that can be found throughout the hotel room. If you look around close enough to the room, you can find writing on different surfaces, saying different things. For example, in my playthrough I got this line, "Don't listen," hidden behind the plant. But interestingly, you can actually find many different phrases written each time that you go through here. Since I didn't have the time to go and get every single one of them, I found some photos of different phrases that can be found throughout the hotel room, including "Never let it end over the bathtub," "As good as dead behind the television," "Rabbit holes in," also over the bathtub, "Monkey sleepwalker under the sink," "Jump, only way out," "I was here, you are not," "You're the prison," which at first I actually thought said JR the prison, but I quickly realized that made absolutely no sense, "Dead puppets," which could be a nod towards Mother Gooseberry, "Don't wake up," and "Even kill Easterman." By the way, full credit for these photos go out to the official Outlast Discord group. It's full of Outlast lore buffs like ourselves, and they did all the hard legwork to find these phrases. Just saying, I'm a big fan of you guys over there. Keep up the amazing work if you're watching. Anyway, these phrases are clearly written by the player character, and it gives us a glimpse into the mind of a successfully turned Murkoff reagent. What I believe this to be is something akin to this example. You know when you're asleep and you have a dream? Then you awake from that dream, and for the first 10 or 20 seconds, the dream is clear as day. But if you say, check your phone, or get a drink of water, or roll over and try to go back to sleep, that memory of the dream disappears. It could be 1 minute from waking up. 50 seconds ago, the dream was as clear as it could be, and now 50 seconds later, you can't remember any of it. That is what I think is happening to the reagent. The dream, in this example, is the trance that they are put into after hearing the code words, "Spider, Eye, Lamb," which, by the way, causes the same blood-red tendrils that the gas within the trials caused, while you were still within Murkoff facilities. These messages and phrases are likely the character's attempt to warn their future self, to help them remember or to give warning after they forget. "As good as dead" shows the desperate state that the character finds themselves in, unable to escape the programming and not being themselves anymore. "Rabbit holes in" could be used as the idiom for rabbit hole, to describe a situation, journey, or process that is particularly strange, problematic, difficult, complex, or even chaotic. "Jump, only way out." A much more tragic example, showing that the character feels that the only way out of this is to jump. "Monkey sleepwalker," when the agent has been controlled by the code words, is equivalent to sleepwalking. Monkeys predominantly being known for tests or being told what to do. "I was here, you are not," shows multiple possibilities. The first is that the memory loss of the character is showing that since they forget, they are almost like a different person each time they wake up. Or, a more interesting one, that possibly the controlled or dreaming version of the character exhibits its own personality, showing the awakened version of the character that they are actually different people or personalities. "You are the prison," showing that the regent's body is literally now a prison, something that they can no longer escape as Murkoff has full control over it. "Don't wake up," This could be the dreaming version of the character expressing that they don't want to wake up or change back. And kill Easterman, which in all fairness is actually pretty straightforward and to the point, which is nice given the ambiguity of some of the other phrases. But it's clear that the reagent knows who is responsible for making them the way that they are, and telling their future self what needs to be done. Even though I'm not totally convinced that killing Easterman at this stage would actually change much, since the programming from the trials is already set in stone, the damage already done. But that sums up the video. There is absolutely no shortage of possibilities and interpretations that can be had with the different phrases or locations shown in the final scene within Outlast Trials. I would love for you guys to comment sleeper in the comments to show that you made it to the end. And also please share your own theories and beliefs on the final events. I will absolutely read through all of them, so please do share. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe for more content in the future. The love shown over the course of the Outlast Trials videos has been incredibly humbling, and I would like to thank you all on behalf of us here at Greenlinks. If it interests you at all, we also have some videos explaining the prime assets in Outlast Trials, starting with old Mother Gooseberry herself, so go and check that out after this. Alrighty guys, until next time, peace.